Hello chaps, this is Jonathan Little for PokerCoaching.com. Today we have two of British's best battling it out on the felt. Let's get right to it. We have two of the biggest winners from England battling it out, playing a high stakes cash game. This is 100, 200 with a $500 straddle. Okay? We are going to be focusing today on Sam Trickett. He has $21 million in live tournament earnings, an absolute crusher. He's been around for forever. And his opponent is Paul Newey, this guy here taking a nap. Paul Newey has over $5 million in live tournament earnings. I played with him a decent amount. He'll get in there and battle, but when all the money goes in, he tends to want to have the nuts, at least in my experience. Let's go ahead and get right to it.
Right,
The book is very, very good.
check.
It's not just poetry, it's well written, it's a good book.
Yeah. He was my...
There's a good book they're clearly talking about. Secrets of Professional Tournament Poker. My new book. Check it out at dnbpoker.com. All right, in this hand, we have Paul raising it up in the hijack to 1,500 pounds. Pounds are worth more than dollars. We are playing very, very deep stacked here, about 200,000 pounds deep. So let's do some math. Can we figure this out? Let me know if I get it wrong in the comments. They're 200,000 deep, 500 effective big blind. That is 400 big blinds deep. Okay. I will venture to say that while, sets are pretty good if you're playing 100 or 200 big blinds deep, but if you actually get in like 400 big blinds, sometimes it's not in great shape. So you have to be a little bit cautious with small pairs. That said, whatever, he raises it up.
Yeah. Jamie Gold.
Oh,
Yeah.
pass.
Jamie Gold was your poker hero.
The way he won that World Series.
Oh.
Nobody will ever win a World Series.
You mean with
Four
the speech
players.
play and stuff like that?
All right, so it's a little bit hard to follow here. Paul raises, Sam calls in the cutoff with a mystery hand. Small blind calls, and under the gun calls as well. Ace-4 offsuit in a straddle game. Remember, he has to put in 1,000 more to win a pot that's going to be like 6,000. I'm not going to say this is a fold, but this very easily could be a fold. Maybe a 3-bet bluff, but you have to be careful with these big, or Ace X offsuit with the little card, Ace X, like a little low X, because you are going to be super dominated. So I'm not going to say you have to fold this, but it's at least a consideration with Ace-4 offsuit. Anyway, let's get to it. Let's see what happens on the flop.
And the way he lost the money.
I was in awe of it. I mean, at the time, I was just like, wow. That's different class.
He did get a...
Literally,
He did
should
talk...
read it from day one.
Yeah, no, he
So
did
all
talk
ran
his
over
way
the
into
board
it. He
before
did
that.
talk people into ridiculous calls.
It's fun listening to British people speak. Shout out to all the British people in the chat. Let me know if you're here. Feel free to leave a comment. I can understand what you're saying half the time. I apologize. I'm a silly American here. You probably can't understand me either.
Genius, that.
All right, flop comes 6, 3, 2. We see that Sam Trickett has the pocket sevens. All right, so small blind goes first. Ace queen seems like an easy check. Alex with the gut shot could conceivably lead. Like if someone's going to connect with this board, 6, 3, 2, it's probably going to be the big blind, and leading with a gut shot, I guess, is reasonable. That said, checking's pretty fine. And then over to Paul. Paul has an easy bet with this hand before we even see what he does. Whenever you flop a set in a multi-way pot, you usually do not want to be slow playing, especially if you have no reason to believe the player yet to act and the cutoff is going to be overly aggressive. That said, Sam Trickett is pretty aggressive, so I'm not going to say he's going to bet here with like 9-8 suited or Queen-Jack suited, but if he does have anything decent, he's going to bet. But if he has something decent, he's just going to call your bet anyway. So here when you have pocket threes, you really want to bet to give one of the players in the blinds the opportunity to put in a check raise in a scenario where this board should be good for their range, in a spot where Paul just knows he's literally never folding. All right, let's take a look and see what happens.
5-5 in the win last year.
Check.
Was he 5-5? Yeah.
Alex is considering it.
Check.
Checks. Over to Paul. Instantly checks. Oh, Paul. I know it feels fun and exciting to get tricky and try to get someone like Sam Trickett, the loose, aggressive battler, to blast off, but I don't think that is ideal. I actually have a continuation betting quiz that you should check out. See if you can get 8 or more correct. Check it out at pokercoaching.com/cbetquiz. I'll tell you a little secret. Multi-way pots, when you have a good hand, almost last to act, you just want to bet because you really want to get money in the pot. Anyway, over to Sam. Let's see what he does. I'm sure he's going to bet his sevens, like I said.
2,000.
He's loose and aggressive.
Pass.
Paul does get the bet.
That was like one of the first main events I watched.
Ace-Queen obviously folds. Ace-4 offsuit. Like, I wouldn't hate a raise here. If you told me he wanted to put in a raise, I think that's very reasonable with the gut shot.
At the time, I liked it.
The reason I like raising in this scenario is that if he does check raise and gets an ace on the turn, it's pretty likely to be good. If he gets a 5, obviously a straight's very good. I mean, he can't realistically bluff turns like king, queen, jack, etc. But I still think it would be quite nice to go for the raise in this scenario. Just because big blind, well, straddle in this scenario is going to have a whole lot of 5-4. Sam could have it, but, you know, you have a 4, so you block that. So it seems like a pretty good spot to go for it. Definitely not folding.
Fold.
He does opt to call with the ace-4.
No.
Dealer presumed Paul Newey had folded already. Over to Paul Newey. I mean, I would just put in the raise. It's an annoying spot because, like, see, this is what's going to happen sometimes where when you check these pocket threes, if you now check raise, what do you think's going to happen? Well, your opponents are going to fold a lot, right? And that's not ideal. Or they're going to, like, put you on aces and only get their money in when they can beat aces. But I hate to break it to you, if they can beat aces, threes are okay, but they lose to the very obvious 5-4. So what would you actually do in this scenario? I want you to take a second to think about this. If you decided to get tricky and check your set on the flop into loose aggressive Sam Trickett, who you expect to bluff a little too often, now you get a bet, 3,000, about half pot, and a call from the straddle, what would we do? You're obviously not folding. So in this scenario, would you call and continue to slow play? Would you put in a small raise, so let's say 7,000, a little bit bigger than a min raise? Would you put in a medium raise to something like 10,000? Or would you put in a big raise to something like 15,000? I want you to pause the video and take a second to consider this and write in the comment section below what you would do. All right, like I said, if I opted, well, first off, I would never check this flop with the pocket threes. I would just always bet. If I did opt to check, expecting Sam to be betting way too frequently, if it was heads up, I would definitely call and continue slow playing, especially if you have the image of Paul Newey as someone who's like generally tight, generally in line. Because when you check raise here, you're basically saying, I have a really, really, really good hand. Or if I am bluffing, it's going to be with something like king 5, backdoor flush draw that has a decent amount of equity against pretty much everything. So it's a scenario where you have to expect Sam, whose range should probably be a little bit too wide, just to fold a lot. So if it was heads up, I think I just like continuing to slow play. But again, that's not really what you're going for because your hand is kind of face up as something that's a marginal made hand, and who knows if Sam's going to try to bluff you off that or not on the turn in the river. Now that it's multi-way, though, when it goes bet and call, you have to presume Alex in the straddle has something. So what is something? Something in this scenario that makes logical sense is going to be something like top pair, some of which are drawing dead, some of which are drawing to a gut shot, a lot of which are actually drawn to a gut shot. Or he's going to have some sort of like overpair or just a float with something like queen jack of hearts that decided to stick around a little bit loose. I have to presume, though, that he's going to have a lot of gut shots in this spot, like he does. So for that reason, I think you just want to go ahead and put in a raise because you don't really want to let the gut shots see the turn. And, you know, if Sam does have something, you're in okay shape, right? Like, say he does have a hand like he has pocket sevens, he's probably not going to fold too often. Although, to be fair, if he thinks Paul's as reasonably straightforward, or not straightforward, like tight as I do, to where Paul just doesn't put in a ton of chips without a premium hand, I think sevens is conceivably a fold in this scenario, especially if Alex is ever trapping. Anyway, let's see what Paul opts to do.
Three players.
Thanks to Party Poker for letting us use this hand, by the way. Check out their YouTube channel at youtube.com/partypokerlive. Paul does opt to slow play, which, you know, sure. And the turn is a disaster. A stone disaster, because it brings a 7, giving Sam Trickett a better set. Didn't even talk about that. Sometimes when your opponent is value betting a hand like 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s, jacks, they're just going to spike on you. Or if they do have 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s, jacks, and the turn is, let's say, an ace or a king or a queen, now they're not going to pay you. Or if they're not going to pay you all that much, right? So don't slow play. Slow playing is bad multi-way. All right, let's take a look at what's going to happen now.
Actively rooted to somebody in the Wilson. You know, I know Michael.
Paul snap checks.
Like we're quite good friends with him. Like before he was, you know, he was
Out in Hollywood.
yeah, out in Hollywood.
Look at that camera angle.
I
That's
really
fantastic.
wanted to win, you know.
Paul snap check here as if he has something like an overpair or ace high. I mean, I think if you are going to be playing it like this, make sure you are also checking kind of quickly in general. You don't want to make sure that your snap check, or you want to make sure your snap checks are not always the nuts. You will find this timing tell among some people where they kind of hem and haw whenever they have a non-premium hand, and then they have a premium hand, they're like, check, check, please bet.
I really want. You made the final in.
If I was in Sam's shoes, I would definitely bet here. You do not want to slow play. You just want to keep betting and hope your opponents have something. Pot's 15,000. I would probably go on the bigger side here, especially given I know Sam probably has a decent amount of bluffs in his range in general. The turn brings backdoor diamonds, which you could definitely have. So yeah, I would go pretty big here. I'd probably go something like 12,000.
10,000 plus.
He goes 10. Seems good, right?
Finish fifth. Yeah.
I only would have gone a little bit bigger because we're playing very, very deep stacked here. If we were shallower stacked, like 100 big blinds, I think smaller is probably better. But as you get deeper and deeper, you really do want to just use big sizes in general, especially when you're betting somewhat polarized, as you often will be doing in multi-way pots. And this hand effectively is the nuts, right? So you want to be betting pretty big just to make sure you give draws poor odds, because obviously the big blind or the straddle Alex in this scenario could easily have backdoor diamonds or a gut shot or something like that. And if Paul does have an overpair, he's just not going to fold to any bet, so you might as well just bet more money. Alex has to fold now.
That was the year he won the...
Over to Paul. Does he put in the check raise now? I think it's definitely viable. I mean, so the tough thing here is that Paul has played his hand in a way such that he essentially thinks he has the nuts, right? And he has, in his mind, trapped Sam. Here's Paul. Here's Sam. He's effectively trapped Sam for 2 bets. Do you put in the raise once the board gets kind of draw heavy? I think the answer is probably just yes. And again, like, whenever you run into set over set, you run into the straight. It's annoying. You're going to lose. What are you going to do? But I think you got to put in the raise. I mean, you want to play a big pot. The only reason I would not raise here is if I thought Sam just had so many garbage bluffs in his range, like Queen Jack of Hearts, to the point that I really, really, really wanted to keep him in. Or if I thought Sam would basically always bluff the river with whatever nonsense he had. Like, say he does have King 5 of Hearts. He's going to bet the turn, and then if he gets to the river with nothing, he's probably going to bet again on the river, right? So this is a spot where I definitely think checking is fine. And given I know, or check calling is fine. And the only reason I'm doing that is because I know Sam likes to get in there and battle. I've played with him a few times, and he will put you in a lot of tough spots. That said, it's not really a tough spot if you have a set. Now is it? So anyway, I think I like slow playing against Sam, but I would check raise against most people.
Poker Players Championship is a 50k. So, so you win the 50k and final table in May. That's incredible.
Yeah, his final table record is like...
Yeah.
Paul does call.
Yeah, I mean, the WPT.
Woo, river's a 6. Paul is doomed.
Make the final table.
Yeah, top 3.
All right, should he lead or should he check? I mean, I would definitely just check here. The problem with leading is that if you lead, as a lot of people do in this scenario because they just want to try to get paid, what's going to call you? Well, Sam almost certainly doesn't have a 6 because 6s would just check behind on the turn, right? Unless it's like 6-5 of diamonds. So he probably doesn't have a 6, which means he either has a 7, which, he could have 8-7, 9-7, etc. Those will probably check behind on the river, but will they call a lead? Probably. So I guess leading gets some value from those. But in this scenario, I do think Sam's range is going to be wide open, full of busted diamonds, busted any backdoor flush draw, hands with a 5, hand with a 4. You may say, would he ever have a hand with a 5 or a 4 pre-flop? Yes, he would, especially ace-5 suited, king-5 suited, stuff like that. So I think you just want to check and give him every opportunity to put in one more bluff. Also, if you lead, he's just going to call the 6. Whereas if he does have like 6-5 of diamonds, but if you do check and he's going to clearly bet, if you put in a check raise, then he may actually call you.
Yeah.
Love it.
27.5 bets.
Paul puts in the lead though. He really wants to get paid. Look at this face. That's probably a WTF face. Huh? I'm sitting here with the literal second nuts, and you lead me. Oh my gosh, what a dream. Here's a bonus question. If you're against someone who you know plays generally straightforward and typically doesn't get too out of line, and all of a sudden they lead for almost the size of the pot into you on the river, 27,000 pounds, do you even raise with the 7-7? What are they going to call you with? He's not going to call with aces. I mean, Paul's, I got to presume, is going to be the type of player who's going to, if he does lead aces here, is just going to fold if he gets raised. Can you raise with the 7-7? I think you can, and the reason I think you can is because I think Paul could easily have ace-6 suited, 6-5 suited, 6-4 suited. I think that's possible. And if he does have those, he's probably going to call. Obviously, he could have 3s or 2s every once in a while, the slow play. He could have 7-6, of course. All those are kind of unlikely whenever Sam has 7-7, but I think you got to be pretty happy to put in the raise. And the question then becomes, how much do we raise? What are we trying to get called by? Well, we're trying to get called by a 6 or a worse full house. Those will probably call a lot, right? I think the play is all in, or at least very big. Like I said, we are playing 200,000 deep. I believe each player has about 40, what am I thinking? What's going on here? 15,000 each in the pot so far. Something like that. 12,000 each. So they're both still playing like 192,000 deep. Can you realistically jam for 190 over 27K? 27K? Be a big shove, wouldn't it? Maybe you shouldn't go for all in then. If there's ever a player who could get away with a big all in, I think Sam's the type of player who could get away with a big all in and get called by a 6 or like pocket 3s or pocket 2s. But I think most people probably just need to go a little bit smaller, like 100, 120. Something like that. What a dream spot, huh? Don't be afraid here. Don't just call. Just calling would be a disaster. Do not just call. Sometimes you're beat by the 6 and the 6, and that's okay. Don't be afraid of getting stacked, especially when you have the literal second nuts.
Raise to 128,000.
How much they say?
Sorry, 108,000.
108. I like the size. Maybe he should have gone all in here. I'm not sure. And look, if you're in Paul's shoes, what a miserable spot. If you think about this logically, what could Sam actually have for value? He probably wouldn't bet the turn with a 6. That means he either has 7-6, which you lose to. What else? 7-7. 2-2. You lose all that besides 2-2. Would he ever raise ace-6? He probably wouldn't bet too many ace-6 on the turn, right? Unless it's ace-6 of diamonds, 6-5 diamonds, 6-4 diamonds, 8-6 of diamonds. Not a lot of combinations of that. And obviously he's not getting great pot odds in this scenario, right? He has to put in 80 to win a total of 280.
Must have pocket 7s.
Woo! Look at Paul. I don't know if I said this, but I certainly thought this at the top of the video. Paul does not like to pay off without the nuts. Did I say that out loud? I hope I said that out loud. Mr. Editor, if I said that out loud, go back and reconfirm. He'll get in there and battle, but when all the money goes in, he tends to want to have the nuts, at least in my experience. Well, let's see if he's going to actually find a fold here. I would literally never fold against Sam here.
But not 7s.
You really going to fold, Paul? I have a problem where I literally never make a big fold on TV. That's not true. I did it just the other day in the US Poker Open. I try to not make big folds on TV. Let's have a drink and consider it.
Let's see fold.
Pass.
Excuse me?
3s.
Is that a fold?
Yeah. Maybe not 2.
That's not safe.
That's a nice hand. That's a nice hand. I can't believe Paul just folded there and saved himself a whole boatload of money. All right, good job, good work. I never would have made that fold. I would have been about 100,000 pounds poorer. So I'm glad I wasn't in that spot. That's going to be it for today. Good luck in your games. Have a great, great week. If you've not checked out my site, check out pokercoaching.com/free. If you like this, click the like and subscribe buttons below. Also click the notification bell so that you do not miss out on any of the content we are putting out on a very regular basis for you here at youtube.com/pokercoaching. That's all for today. Bye-bye. Did you know that subscribing to this YouTube channel will increase your poker win rate by 36%? Go ahead, do it. Actually, that was a bluff. You actually have to watch all the content and apply yourself and work hard and put in volume. Sorry about that.